start. Oh, okay, that's fine.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We have a kind of a busy schedule tonight, so we're gonna go right through our introductions pretty quickly. I'm gonna ask each council member to just take a couple seconds to introduce themselves. Paul, during the mic.
Now. Good, okay. Everyone, Paul Charbonneau, I've served on council since start of 2022. Grew up here, work additionally as wrestling coach for Hazen High School. I have for Wizard Rose the last 6 or 7 years. I'll hit real quick on committees I serve on in case you have quick questions about that. I represent us regionally on our regional transit committee with King County. K4C, which is a climate policy work group, mental illness drug dependency advisory committee, if you have questions about mental health policy, as well as public issues committee, which is a regional policy committee. And then I also do things I worked on creating our economic development committee for the council itself. And then I'm really glad you're here tonight because something I've pushed for very hard since I was on council was having more forums and spaces like this for us to gather. Able to take advantage of the room for kids and crafts. And I believe it's in the gym. Thank you to our staff for putting that together and look forward to questions and more.
Hello, everybody. Steve Tallman, first year on the city council. I've lived in Newcastle for 29 years. It's nice to see your faces here. We need you to be engaged to keep us on track. I am very involved in our ad hoc public safety meeting, committee, with the group they have in the back, and it's nice to see you.
Good evening, Newcastle. My name is Pratima Lakotia. This is my 3rd year in the council, and I am part of the finance committee, economic committee, and the salaries and benefits committee. Looking forward to your questions tonight.
Good evening. My name is Tom Griffin. I'm resident for 48 years plus. And this is my first year on the 2nd term. And my background is CPA.
Hi everybody, my name is Ariana Sherlock. I've been on the council since 2020, and I lived in Newcastle since 2013, and I serve on the Salary and Benefits Committee. And I just got a note from Councilmember Burford. She's on her way. She's stuck in a traffic jam.
Okay, my name is Rob Clark. I'm the mayor. I've been a mayor since January. This is my 3rd year on the council. Really quickly, I'd like to introduce some of our staff. We have City Manager Scott Engel here. We have our Finance Director Lindsay Chambers standing there. And our Community Development Director Aaron Fitzgibbons in the back there. Next to Jane Westman, our HR and City Clerk. And over here we have Jeff Robbins, our Public Works Director over here in the front. I'd also like to give a big shout out now. Back here, she's taking some photos. Our own Superwoman. I know she has an official title like community, fairs and so on, but she's really Superwoman. But all you enjoyed Newcastle Days, if you did, she's the one who thanks because she did an outstanding effort along with the help of the CAC. So we have some outstanding volunteer committees and a couple of representatives tonight. We have the Trails, the Purchase Council, and the Public Safety Team. So if you see a committee member or a commission member volunteer in our community, please thank them for their efforts. So they do a lot of work and they do it without any pay and just for the satisfaction of doing it. So thank them all. Okay, tonight, folks, this is our 2nd town hall. We timed it so that it would land during budget season. So the main focus tonight is we're gonna talk about our budget. However, we will entertain any questions, right? Because we work for you and we want to hear what you have to say. So tonight, we're gonna start out, really quickly. Our Lindsay and Scott are gonna give us a financial overview of our budget. So I'm gonna turn it over to Lindsay and Scott.
Thanks for coming out. It's great to see everybody. We are going to talk briefly about the budget. It's going to be very overviewish, just with our time. We're not going to get into super specifics of the budget, but we wanted everybody to kind of have an idea of how the budget works and how the local government budgeting in Washington works. And so that's how we're going to go through. So just some basic slides that just because so I always think of things as how we're organized. And we make sure everybody understands how the city is organized. You elect your city council. They hire, they live in a council manager city, so that's our form of government. So the city council hires a city manager, and I have that privilege. And then we just start departments and the directors of those departments, organizations. I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay Chambers. She's our finance director. She's going to talk to us about how we account and budget for finances in local governments, as well as in Newcastle specifically, and then talk to us about how we get it.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? All right. First, thanks to all of you for being here. I know Mayor Clark already, but we appreciate you being here and are happy to provide some information that we hope you'll find helpful during this year's budget session. So the state auditor's office is our main supervisor, if you will, as a finance team. They set the standard for how we do all of our accounting and financial transactions, how we report everything, how we report. And it's really great because they have a system set up that every single public entity in Washington state uses. And so if you were to look at other cities across the state or even utility districts, counties, everybody uses the same system. So it makes it really great because you can do comparisons across different cities because we're all reporting and accounting for things the same way. So fund accounting is again required for RCW. And that means that we have different funds. So they are different buckets of revenues and expenditures, if you will. Each fund has to be balanced when it's adopted via the budget, which means that the incoming resources are balanced with the outgoing. And it's divided up into a couple of different things. I'll get into that in just a minute. But the reason we have these separate funds and they're defined by SAO, depending on what type of activity that fund is experiencing. So for instance, we have our general fund, which is kind of the catch-all for anything that doesn't fit into another fund that's more restricted. We have a fund for our debt service. We have a fund for a couple funds for capital projects. So those are accounted for separately. And oftentimes the reason that we separate them out is because the resources that are coming in for those funds are restricted. So for instance, we have impact fees that go into both our capital, parks capital and transportation capital funds. And those are restricted as to what they can be used for. And it's capital projects. So we keep all of it within that same fund and that ensures that those resources are getting used in the correct way. We also have a couple internal service funds, which would be our facilities and our equipment rental. And what that means is that those resources are typically coming from within the city's own resources. So it's coming from other funds. And then we're accounting for activities that are specific to that. So for instance, the facilities fund handles the building that we own and have tenants in. So in order to keep that separate, we have it in its own fund. The other thing is that we use the cash basis of accounting. And so there's either cash or there's accrual, and most smaller entities find that cash basis is an easier way to implement and to report their finances. So for us, that means that just like your own personal bank account, you have income when it goes into your bank account and you can spend it, but you can't spend it before that. And then we recognize the expenditure when it gets paid. So if we know there's something coming up, but it hasn't actually been paid yet, it's not counted as an expenditure. So again, as I mentioned, we have fund-specific budget. So when we adopt the budget, you'll see the budget ordinance, which is what, when council agrees on everything, that's the final piece is to adopt the budget ordinance. And it has all the separate funds listed, and they each have their own total for revenue and expenditures. And again, when I mentioned it has to be balanced, and that's required by law. So what that means is we have what's called beginning fund balance, and that's the resources that are left over from the previous year, plus any new revenues coming in throughout the year that we estimate must equal all of the expenditures we have planned, and whatever is above and beyond that is considered ending fund balance. Now, we do have a couple funds, our operating funds. We just adopted new financial policies earlier this year. So our operating funds, we have a requirement to have at least 2 months worth of expenses in the ending fund balance. And that allows for enough cash flow, because sometimes the expenses happen before the revenues, or excuse me, sometimes expenses can be a little bit heavier and they don't track the same with revenue. So we have that fund balance to help with cash flow as we move along through the year. And then we make sure that by the end of the year, we're still going to be meeting that ending fund balance requirement. It's a little different with our capital funds, because with those, typically the projects will vary from year to year. And we don't have, how would I explain? I guess I would just say that if the funding is not there, the project doesn't typically happen. We want to make sure we have the funding in place before those capital projects happen. And then lastly, when we go through the budget process, we have a couple different public hearings, and those are for all of you and your neighbors to come in and offer your comments, suggestions, recommendations for the council and for staff to hear while we're going through that. Okay, so getting a little bit more specific into the budget process. Typically in May, we present a budget calendar to the finance committee for their review, and once they approve of that, that sets the pace for the rest of the budget cycle. So June through August, we will start collecting information from directors as far as what their goals are for the next year, any requests that they have. This is typically when we start discussing any staffing changes for the following year. That would be included in the budget. And then City Manager Kingle and I meet with all of those directors one-on-one, along with sometimes their managers, so we can get a little bit more information about what they're requesting, what they're expecting as far as needs in the following year, and make sure we can meet as many of those as possible. And then in July, we had a council study session where we discussed the fiscal sustainability model. And then we also looked at the 6-year forecast. So one thing Newcastle does is we always have a 6-year forecast going on. So we're looking out both with the next year and then 5 years after that, doing our best to estimate what we expect to happen and see what that's going to do with our cost over time. So now we are into September, and this is where we will start. At the last meeting, we had an early look, so just kind of an overview, and we'll share a little bit of those numbers for what were our initial thoughts before we present the preliminary budget. And then during that meeting, we talked about some of the assumptions that we were making as far as revenues, expenditures, staffing changes, things like that. At that point, we do know some of our costs for the next year. The rest of it, we try to estimate as best we can. So the preliminary budget itself will be posted and available online by next Friday, the 27th. So it'll be on the finance page of the website. You'll be able to find that. I'll say by end of day Friday. And then once that's posted, we'll have copies to all of the council members so they can review it in great detail. And then October first, we'll have our first budget study session. So we have a couple budget study sessions in October, and those are before the council meetings. And during that time, City Manager Pingle will do a more thorough presentation to council and to the audience to let them know. Typically, we focus on any changes for the following year. So if there's significant variances from the previous year, that's what we'll focus on, so we can get into those details in why those changes are being proposed. And then, as I said, we have a couple different public hearings, so we're required to have these, and for good reason. It's a great opportunity to get that public input that we're looking for to make sure that the council is making the best decision on the budget that they adopt. So the budget has to be adopted by December 31st. With the calendar that we have set up right now, we could adopt it as early as November 5th if council is in agreement. And if they are not, then we'll continue to have study sessions, and then hopefully they will agree by December 31st. Okay. And so this will be in the budget book as well, but here's just a short version of what that calendar typically looks like.
The types of funds and just the overview of what those funds do and what they look like, and what the city of Newcastle has. So our main operating fund for the city is the general fund. It accounts for all resources and expenses that aren't required to be accounted for somewhere else. And then it's the only fund that can support any other fund. Our main sources of revenue in the general fund are property tax, sales tax, and development fees. And then we just put our current projections for those up for you. Other major revenues include grants. We're always looking for grants. Franchise fees and investment interest. When interest rates are really high, investment interest is awesome. And so last year and this year, investment interest has been crowded. And we know that things are start.
Could you hold the mic a little closer?
I'm sorry. When we know things are going to start to come down, we start looking at potential strategies to make sure we continue to get our investment interest coming in at a good rate. And so, yeah, we just put our approximate general fund revenue up there for you tonight. We continue to work through the next week before we get that posted for you at the end of September to make adjustments. And so that's why we put some broad numbers in for tonight. As far as expenditures, the general fund generally covers our executive expenses, finance, city events, IT, public safety, planning and building, and community development, and our parks maintenance. And our main expenses are salaries and benefits, supplies and services, and then especially in the way that we're set up, we contract out fire services and police services. And so those are big intergovernmental spending pieces that take up the bigger chunk of the costs for our general fund. And so, as you can see, just police and fire contracts are nearly $7 million of our about $13 million in expenses for it. And this year we do anticipate about $50,000 surplus. The next type of fund is the special revenue, our special revenue funds, and the two that the city has, the city of Newcastle has, are the street fund and the community reserve fund. So these funds account for resources that have to be used in a specific way. And so for the street fund, that main source of revenue is the motor vehicle fuel tax. So that's a state shared tax that we get to maintain our streets. And so that can only be used for our streets, and so it has to be accounted for separately. Generally, our motor vehicle fuel tax is not sufficient to cover all of our street fund needs. And so most years we anticipate that the general fund will have to help cover the street fund. For 2025, we anticipate that that'll be about $5 million that the general fund will transfer to the street fund so that the street fund stays full. The other fund is our community reserve. And that can be used for capital purchases, operating shortfalls. That's also where we've, put our, the grant funds that the city received for the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. And so, when we make, so for the pandemic relief plan, when we make expenses for things that the council has determined to use ARPA for, we transfer out of those funds out of the community reserve. And the community reserve currently has about $1.5 million that are not related to the pandemic. The next kind of fund is our capital improvement funds. Lindsay talked about this a little bit. So our main capital improvement funds are real estate excise tax, transportation capital, and parks capital, and really the REIT fund. So you'll probably hear REIT. That's just real estate excise tax. It's essentially a tax on real estate sales, and we have to use it for capital projects. And so the REIT fund really will support our capital funds. Most of our REIT funds are used for transportation projects. We use some for parks, and then when we have major capital expenses, like in the facilities fund or anything like that, we are able to use this. As far as transportation capital, again, we use a lot of REIT for those projects, but the other main source of revenue for transportation capital is transportation impact fees, which are derived from development. The same thing with the parks capital. Parks impact fees are derived from the development. We have the development fees that developments have to pay as a part of developing their projects. In the parks capital, we do use some REIT for those projects, but really we rely heavily on grant funding for our parks projects. That's definitely a place where if we don't get a grant or we're unsuccessful, those projects will get pushed back until we're able to get funding. I just listed out our main transportation and parks projects that we anticipate for 2025. For transportation, we always have a citywide traffic calming item, and that is used for a lot of things. And we keep it fairly general so that we're able to be nimble with that as things come up. So for 2024, one of the conversations that the city council had early on was lowering the speeds on Southeast Main Creek Park Drive and 116th. We lowered the speed from 30 to 25, and so we have to make those traffic adjustments, change out the signs, things like that. And so that's what that general item is for. We have another project that is primarily for our pavement management system. So most of the time, every other year, we have a major overlay project or a major road rehabilitation project that we've been successful so far with the program where we get federal funding every 2 years. That's generally 4 to 6 years out to use it for major pavement overlay, and that's what that thing is for. A big project this year for 2025 is Southeast Main Creek Park Drive bike and pedestrian improvements, and that'll be for curb gutter sidewalk improvements from the new roundabout, finishing that last gap that's in Southeast Main Creek Park Drive. And then we have some design projects coming up, and so typically with major projects, year one, they'll get designed, and so we'll have design costs, and then year two, they'll get constructed. And so the next designs coming up are for our Southeast 76th Street, non-motorized improvements and sidewalks, as well as Newcastle Way Light. For parks, again, we have a general category, so general park improvements, and that just allows us to hit on needs that we have as they come up. One of the biggest things is Lake Warren Park plan implementation. So we have the Lake Warren Park master plan. As we through the summer, we'll talk about the 6-year capital improvement program for each of our capital project funds, so transportation parks and then stormwater that we'll get into later. And so the projects that we talked about for the Lake Worth Park Master Plan implementation this year, or next was, designed for a turnaround at the end of 129th that goes into the backside of, Lake Worth Park, as well as looking at the dog park. And then, we'll have, design and construction for Hazelwood Park Board next year. Our one enterprise fund is the Stormwater Management Fund, or you'll hear SWIM all the time. It's a SWIM fund. That's the only utility that we operate in-house in the city. Water and sewer, energy, those are all provided by other agencies. And so utility funds generally are enterprise funds. That means that they have to operate like a business. So fees for the service have to cover costs of the service. So for us, that is your stormwater utility fee. That gets charged twice a year with your property taxes. And so this is one of those things that Lindsay was talking about earlier with fund balance. And one of the main reasons for fund balance is that our main revenue source in the general fund and our main revenue source in stormwater, we get twice a year. We get the first tranche in April and May, and we get the second tranche in October and November. And so we have to have fund balance so that we can operate those funds for 5 months of the year before we get any revenue. So that's the reason we have to have fund balance. And then on the expenditure side, it's really similar to any other fund. The main expenditure for salary, benefits, and services, and then with the stormwater management fund, that also have its own capital projects. So we don't have a separate stormwater capital project fund. It's just part of the stormwater. And then the last category is internal service funds. Lindsay hit on this quite a bit, so I won't spend too much time on it. But our two internal service funds are the equipment rental fund and the facilities fund. Something that we're excited about for 2025 is that we kind of reestablished our equipment rental fund program. And so our equipment rental fund essentially it pays for the repair and replacement of all of our city vehicles and equipment. And the whole point of this fund is to account for each vehicle as we go along through the years, so that we're setting aside the replacement costs of that vehicle or that piece of equipment each year through the useful life, so that when we have to replace it, it's not some big hit to the city. We've already put all of that money away. So it's not some expense that we weren't expecting or that we don't know is coming. We plan for it. And so when city vehicles and city equipment needs to be replaced, it's simple. We planned on it for a long time. And it doesn't have to be controversial. And then the facilities fund again accounts for maintenance and repair costs for the city's facilities. We have the city hall building, the public works annex, as well as the Lake Worth Park Garage. Generally, those are funded through, the largest portion is funded through rent for the tenants at City Hall, fees that they're charged, along with fees charged to other departments based on their usage of city building space.
Sorry, folks, the city manager uses up all our time. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Lindsay. I will say we are very fortunate to have Lindsay as our finance director, and so are you, because she's done a great job so far in her tenure here as the finance director. So this time, folks, we're going to open the floor to questions. Jane is going to walk around with the microphone. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We would ask out of respect that you ask one question. We can always come back to you if we have a second question. We want to get through the audience. If it's possible that maybe you don't want to raise your hand and ask a question, maybe it's not something you're comfortable with. There's a bowl or basket on the table in the back on the city table. You can fill out a question and write it down, and we will get to those after we've taken all the hand raisers. So with that, we'll get going. So do you have a question for, and you can ask of us in general or direct it to a specific council member or maybe a staff member, so there's no limit. Who would like to go first? The brave soul. All right. And if you could please state your name and where you're from. If we
Sure, my name's John Deeks. I've been a Newcastle resident for 24 years. I just had a clarification question for Scott. In the general expenditure slide you showed, you had a category called services, and it was about $2.3 million. And I'm just wondering, was that final or that second to last slide with the service funds, or is that a different category? You should explain that category to us. Sure.
So you're talking about, I had a slide for the general fund that had services and then one for the swim fund that had services.
Yeah.
So the services in the swim fund are specific to stormwater management. So we have either staff or we contract out some of the cleaning catch basin and factoring out lines and things like that. So that's what goes into the services line for specific to the swim fund. In the general fund, it's a lot of things. We contract out some plan review, we contract out a lot of engineering review for development. We have a city attorney, so those are all go into that services.
Well. Wow. The brave soul there.
My name is Bryce Stephen. I've been a Newcastle resident since 2008. The last town hall meeting, I recall a member of the community making a comment. It's been on my mind since they made the comment that the Okie Golf Course was not, potentially not paying their full share of taxes. And that was the comment, the gist of it. And I have not looked into it at all, but I'm just curious if there was any accuracy to that statement or to that comment, if the board knows anything additional, they might want to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryce. Would like to answer that question here. I'm going to pass the microphone around. We got any comments? Okay, well then I'll take it. So we are currently looking at the golf course. We're looking at all sources of revenue in our city. What is potential revenue? What is some things that have been possible that maybe we never did before? One of the things that we're looking at, and I can't speak to the comment that you said, I don't know what exactly that context was of it. I don't remember, sorry, but we are looking at the golf course and whether or not we should be charging them an admissions tax. So that is currently something this council is discussing. In fact, it's coming back for further discussion at our next meeting on October 1st, which is coming for a vote. So the premise there is the city, would we ask the golf course for admissions fees? In other words, taxing the use of the things that go on at the golf course. And there's some things that could be taxed and things that could not be taxed and so on. So we've discussed whether we're going to implement that and what percentage and so on. So that's coming back for the next meeting. And it'll be up for a vote on October 1st. So there's pros and cons and plus and minuses and for and against that. So when the person, I don't know who it was, but when they said, the golf course maybe isn't paying enough, everybody has an opinion about what people pay, I suppose. But we are looking at the admissions tax as a means of additional revenue. I don't know whether it'll pass. We'll find out on October 1st.
Thank you.
Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. Who else would like to ask a question? I see a hand way over here. To make Jane work tonight.
I wonder if the last gentleman was referring to the idea that the golf course originally was supposed to be allowing public use of a particular trail across the property. It's called the Clubhouse Trail. And for that, they were getting, it was $20,000, and I don't know who got the assessed value of their taxes. Whatever it was a long time ago, I don't know if it's ongoing Or if anybody's looked into that, so it might be, that's what it
Thank you, Peggy. I can't speak to that question at all. Sorry, I'm not familiar with whether or not we're allowed to trail across the golf course. I'd have to find out. We'd have to, I don't know, city manager, are you aware of it? No.
No, not that. I can speak to the question a little bit though.
Okay, please do.
I was looking at Carol a little bit just because she might remember what the program is called. But, and I don't know if this is where the comment came from at the last meeting, but the golf course, when it was being developed or when they were purchasing that property, where they were gonna develop it as open space, so they are zoned open space and pay taxes accordingly. So they also applied for, what is it?
Public benefit rating.
There you go. They also applied to be for the public benefit rating system, which also gives them some tax break benefits. And so they've had that status since the golf course was developed. And so I don't know if that's where the comment came from, but that's something that is a thing with the golf course. But it's not anything that they've done that they weren't allowed to do or. And so,
just to throw a little bit more light on the subject, one of the benefits the golf course did provide was that trail thing you mentioned, the clubhouse trail, which is open to the public. And we show it on our comprehensive plan map, so there's a public trail. So I think they get sometimes tax rebate for granting that trail, keeping it open. And that's something the city should be aware of in case we have difficulties keeping the trail open. I don't have any real details of the exact numbers right now. The city should be aware of it.
It's for Scott, and it's a minor technical question on the swim funds. You say at the top of the slide that it has to balance on an annual basis. And I realize the numbers that were there were preliminary, but it looked to me like you had 600,000 in capital expenses as part of the expense side, and running a deficit of 300,000. So if that's the case, when the final budget was adopted, would you reduce the capital costs or bring 300,000 in from somewhere else?
so a balanced budget doesn't require, so state law doesn't require. A balanced budget means that your beginning fund balance plus revenues exceeds expenses. And so the swim fund has really strong fund balance. And so that there will still be plenty of fund balance after using up some of that fund balance. And so, but as to the specific questions for 2025, we have two one-time costs coming up in 2025, where a new thing that we're required to do is an enhanced maintenance plan. And so that'll be a one-time cost that we don't usually have. And it's also time to update the comprehensive surface water management plan. So those are big costs that go into plans that is really easy to use up fund balance for because they're not on. Thank you.
And I have been in Newcastle, well, I have been in Newcastle since 1994, so it's been 30 years. With the winter coming up soon, I would like to know a little bit about how do we prepare for the snow days, and how do we prioritize which road to plow first, and how do we find out, you know, when my neighborhood will be plowed? So is there a schedule that will be posted?
Sounds like Director Braun, where are you?
So we do not have schedules for snowplows, if that's what the question is. We have priority routes, and those are on the Newcastle webpage. If you go to newcastlewa.gov/,
think it's snow and snow map. And it provides a map there that gives the priorities for the different routes. And obviously Coal Creek Parkway, Coal Creek Parkway is the highest priority because that needs to be maintained for emergency lifeline. And then other arterials like Newcastle Way, 116, 76, things like that are the next priority. So if you have any questions about that, you can look on that map and find out. And basically, depending on the intensity of the storm, it might just spend all the resources on priority one. And if it lightens up, it may get to priority 2, then you never get to priority 3, and you get the storm event until the storm event's over. Every storm is different. And then cul-de-sacs, that always gets asked. We have hundreds of cul-de-sacs. They're the bottom last priority of everything. Because of the time and the intensity to plow a cul-de-sac versus using the main through area. Did I answer your question? Oh, how do we prepare for films? Sorry to interrupt the question. So we have an event. I think it was in the end of August. I don't remember the exact date, but basically they get all these snow equipment, get it in working order, make sure troubleshoot that there's not any issues since it's been in storage since last March. They go through and make sure all the supplies are up to status. And that gives us enough time from August to the first anticipated storm event to order new parts for the plows or the sanders. Is there anything else that we do this every year? We prepare, get all the equipment running in August, and then put it away for the first storm event. There may not be a storm event. Every storm is a little different. And when it happens.
I think you also were asking, how to know when it's coming on your street. Is that part of the question? I don't think there's a specific like tracker. We're not quite to that level, but our staff is extremely friendly and available. If you call, I'm sure if you call the city hall line, you might be able to find out at least where that, get an update. No, Jeff is saying no.
During a snow event, please do not call. I'm not going to respond to emails about applying our request during a storm event because we have our priority. We work it methodically. And if you ask when are you going to plow my street, I'm not going to for you.
Sorry,
So-
Jeff, what I meant by that is like, just to get an update on where, because there's the map, okay? And you can see the map, but you might not know where is the city
I'm not
currently in their map. Okay, you don't
during
know.
a snow event. Because I don't know, I'm not going to find out. Because it's all hands on deck. We're responding. There may be equipment down, there may be issues that come up. Let's say somebody called and said, hey, my wife's in labor, we need to get her out. So then they'll divert off of whatever they're doing to help get that person out. Everything's different. We are looking at getting some potentially GPS locators, then we can do a map that shows, but it's one of these things that costs money. So it's like $30 per truck per month. So it's like value that cost versus, how many people are asking for that information. And there's one more thing to maintain. But during a snow event, honestly, we're not going to answer the question, when's the plow going to be in my street? I'm not gonna be able to tell you, and I'm not gonna take the time to find the answer. Because when the snow's coming down, we're responding, the snow may lighten up, then we can move to the lower priority routes, but then it'll intensify, then we'll go back to Coal Creek Parkway. So it's a very dynamic situation, and unfortunately, we're not gonna be able to answer a question. And please don't call City Hall to say I need my street plowed. Because they're gonna work the priority. Regardless of the calls, we're gonna still work the priority, and that's the priority map is certainly if you look at it and you have a question, it is a work in progress. We have changed that map over the years. There's also a part in there, there's a de-icing map too. So when we have cold, frosty weather, we have our hot spots that are frosty on like a cold night. And then if the deep freeze, we have the regular de-icing route. So if you take a look at that and notice, hey, there's this spot in my neighborhood that gets frosty, it's not on your map, reach out to us and we can then check that out maybe. I'll add to that really quickly. Thank you, Director Franz. I think, so speaking to the dynamic situation, what I would encourage you in your situation as this is something I've had a constituent come to me with before and say, hey, we obviously have quite a few hills and a lot of areas that could be precarious given the snow, let us know ahead of time, right? As opposed to when it's already happening. We have we're not somewhere like Minnesota where we're constantly using our snow equipment, right? We're using them for a specific time of the year. So let us know ahead of time, right? That priority route is always evolving, as well as if you have a certain spot, and this is something we hear a lot from folks, I want to encourage as well. You have a certain spot where you feel like maybe there are folks that are speeding quite frequently, maybe there's something else that you want us to look at. It's the best thing to do is reach out to one of us, reach out to, and we can, communicate that with our public works director, and then trying to, anticipate these things before they become it's harder for us to help you with the problem of folks speeding if it's, you're telling us it's already happening, or it's harder for us to get a road plowed if you're telling us it's already happening. Right, so letting us know ahead of time. I know a lot of folks have their own anecdotes and their own lived experience with those situations. So reach out to one of us. We can communicate that for 2 director bonds. I've done that for snowplow routes. I've done that for speeding locations. That's what I think would be problem is.
Well, it's 75 degrees today, and here we're talking about snow. But thank you. All right, next.
I'm here, Hershey New Permits. Thank you, Jeff.
I was going to ask you to comment on the ice management and frost management as well.
And yes, and thank you to Jeff and the city for lowering the speed limits, making our streets safer. During the update to the comprehensive plan and transportation element, I had submitted maybe 8 or so suggested traffic safety policies, as well as suggested that, and I'm curious if it got added in the budget or could be, that we have a program of offering either safety vests or safety straps for our families and their children available at City Hall. There's a great example at City of Kenmore for such a program. Now that we're going to be entering the dark days of living in the Northwest. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And thank you, and for everybody that, please, we encourage you to submit suggestions for the comprehensive plan, right? We're taking public comment constantly, right? The plan is nearing its completion by the end of the year, hopefully, but we still want to hear from you. The comprehensive plan, as a reminder, is our 10-year vision for the city. It's what we want the city to look like for the next 10 years. So it's all kinds of different things, like Claudia mentioned, transportation, there's housing, land use, economic development, and so on. And please seek out a planning commission member or ask one of us if you have questions about them. Next question over here.
I have 4 of those in my garage, buddy, because I've got a 10-year-old son who rides a scooter at 7 o'clock at night to Safeway in the dark, and it scares the crap out of my wife, right? So I love that idea. I also love that you said, hey, the comprehensive plan is getting amended. We have some input. Heck, yeah. We put so much time in the planning commission to sending out a survey and thinking about the survey for weeks to ask the right questions. So Claudia, thank you for bringing up my favorite topic right now, which is the comprehensive plan rewrite. The vision for the city for the next couple of years, like 10 years or whatever. So yes, to that idea, we'll steal from Kenmore gladly. And please, please, please come up to me and the other planning commissioners and those city council members, because all we do is we give them advice and ideas based on what you all say. And so if you want changes to the, any element it is, whether it's transportation or housing or land use, Claudia, you know more about the city than I could ever. You forgot more than I could ever know about the city. You got planning commissioners like me who are available to talk to you. So give us our ideas, give you their ideas. And I love that one. We'll steal from Kenmore. But yes to that idea. Thank you so much. It's an honor to help out.
Okay, who's next? Who's the brave soul? Let's see again in the back. All right. We're gonna make Jane go from one side of the room to the next for every question.
Definitely, Terry Meadows. What plans do you have? This your physical sustainability for Newcastle without reducing, without reducing any services?
that was kind of hard to hear. I think the question, if I paraphrase, is fiscal sustainability without reducing
Services.
services. Thank
So
you.
what's the city's plan?
City plans not reduce services. Is that correct? I'm sorry, folks, the audio in here is a little rougher tonight. I apologize.
So I think the question was, what plans do we have for fiscal sustainability? Basically, we want to sustain our city physically without reducing any services. We are still in the process of looking at things. We have a comprehensive 6-year plan. We have a model. Every day that we meet at City Council, every time we meet in the Finance Committee, we are always updating that model. There are some revenue ideas that are being floated around. One of that being, one question was asked about the golf course fee, the admission fees. That also is part of the fiscal sustainability plan, another revenue source that we were looking at. There are other few ideas we have. Scott, our city manager, has done a good job of in the last few years creating efficiency within the kind of downsizing within the staff. He created some efficiency there where he combined a few roles. So that was, done. And then few more revenue ideas we are looking at. So we are still in the process. So far, the model shows up to 26, it looks good. And once we update those models, I believe that few more years, we will be able to balance our budget. But again, we're still in the process. And if anybody has any new revenue ideas, I know Carol gave us some ideas last time, which we are going to look and review in the Finance Committee. If anybody else has any other revenue ideas for the city, they're more than welcome to make suggestions. But we are not looking at cutting any services at this point. Till we look at, the balance sheet.
So this is a plot for Lindsay Chambers, our Director of Finance. There's no status quo in the way that she manages our books for our city. And she has really cleaned up our books to the point of where we are working on actuals versus loose historical figures for projections. And so that's allowing us to operate more lean and more accurately. So I just want to give her a plug for that. And so she's really overhauling our books and keeping us tight there. When we take a look at sustainability, we have to look at both sides of the equation. And it's a good question to ask because we provide a certain level of services. Our income as a city might not keep up with the costs, and our costs are rising. Just like at home, if your wages aren't keeping up with the costs, and you have an annual vacation, you have a boat, you have a vacation property, at some point, something's going to have to give. So you're not going to be able to maintain that level of lifestyle if you don't have the income for it. And the only way for us to get money is to generate new revenue streams. We also, as we're looking at this process, we need to dial more into the costs and renegotiate contracts and do things from that side of the equation as well. And not just look at revenue streams, which are hard to come by in a small city.
Thank you. So the good news is because Lindsay, our finance director, and Scott, city manager, have done a really awesome job really digging in and I agree with Councilmember Tallman, just making sure that we're all really comfortable understanding where we're at and feeling that we trust the staff on the cuts that they've made already and being more efficient. And so that's been happening for several years now. And because of that, it feels like, this is my opinion, but I'm really hopeful with the discussions that we've been having with the entire council lately. It feels like we're all coming in kind of at a good base level, we're agreeing where we're at right now. And looking out, using this model that everyone keeps referring to, it's a spreadsheet that has different options, different levers that we legally can pull if we choose to do so. And so I've been playing around with that at, I don't remember which meeting it was, maybe our last one or the one before. I did put together a plan to specifically answer your question, which included the admissions tax we've been talking about starting in 2025. Another tool was the Transportation Benefit District, also referred to as TBD. There are lots of acronyms in government. If you don't know what we're saying, just ask. We forget that we're just talking in acronyms a lot. Anyway, that one is a fee that is on your car tax. So when you renew your registration each year, the city is allowed to get some money, charge a little bit of money, and that brings that into the city. My plan included doing that starting in 2026 at $20. You can raise it from there, but the plan I put together just kept it at 20. And then, so those first two things bring in the estimate is about $200,000 each year for each of those. And then the other thing I played around with the model was turning on a 1% utility tax starting in 2027, because as Deputy Mayor Associate pointed out, we're really okay through 2026. And so 2027 seems to be, at least what we're looking at right now, seems to be when we really need to start thinking about more revenue if we want to keep the current services that we're providing. And then it also included a 20% public safety levy. Now, I put together this plan really as an example of what all of us can be doing with this model and tweaking it, playing around, having a conversation. What are people comfortable with? And I was really pleased to hear that conversation get started. So we don't have a plan right now to answer your question, but I am personally always looking at it, tweaking it. We get new numbers. Let's look at it again, because my goal is to have a plan for fiscal sustainability without cutting any services, because we don't provide a ton of services in the city. It's pretty bare bones. And a lot of the services that we provide are mandated by law that we have to provide them, like permits and kind of boring stuff, to be honest. But it's legally we need to do that to be a city. And then also part of the plan is we do have a lot of extra fund balance in our general fund right now, which is great. So that's why we're saying we probably don't need to enact a lot of new taxes for a little while. Because we're able to kind of use that. And it sounds like in the conversation so far, the council is pretty open to that idea. So we're having discussions. It'd be great. It's always great to get feedback from all of you. Some people are really interested in a public safety levy because that, first of all, has to go to the voters. That can be really important to some people. But then I hear on the other side, we live in an area where there's a lot of levies that are not from the city, but so that affects all of our property taxes, and it's not something that the city has control over. So maybe a utility tax is something that, when you're looking at your utility bill and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm really using a lot of water in the summer to have a green lawn. Maybe I can
let it get a little brown this year and I can save some money in that utility tax. So it's a little bit easier for you to control in your own home. And so that is appealing to some people, whereas the public safety levy is more appealing to others. So those are the conversations that we're having and we're weighing. I hope that answers your question.
So I'll add a little bit onto that. So I'm a very limited government guy, right? I probably have all figured that out by previous comments I've made, but 4 years ago, we had a referendum on the ballot for a utility tax. I don't know a lot of you remember that, right? And part of the argument for the people who wanted the utility tax is if we didn't have the utility tax, right, we would have no police and fire services, the city would, basically implode, and here we are 4 years later, we're gonna have a surplus this year, we don't have a utility tax, right? Our city manager has created efficiency in our government that the previous city manager refused to do. So there's always, with government, room to improve, folks. I'm an optimist that we can continue to squeeze down and not sacrifice services, right? So I believe that we should need to look at, how we can continue to make the government more efficient before we start talking about different revenue services. Now, Ariana is correct. We have to look at what's possible in all areas, right? But I personally believe that we still have a ways to go. And another thing that we did recently at the beginning of this year is we revised some of our financial policies that said, one of them said, every single fund we had to have a 25% reserve, and when it was totally unnecessary. So we changed that. And only the necessary funds have to have a reserve of 2 months. So we saved a ton of money, that money that's freed up, basically that's frozen money that you can't use to make liquid. So there's plenty of things that we can still do, folks. So like a couple people said here, if you have revenue ideas, we want to hear them. Of course we want to hear them. But as we go through the budget process, every year we have heard, it's doom and gloom, but we always manage to do okay. Because for a variety of reasons, right? And part of it is efficiency, part of it is changing policies, part of it is, tightening our belts. So, we will, I promise you, as a council, look for the best ways to make your government efficient before we start raiding your pocketbook. Right? I have here in front of me, I printed this out just for friends here, all the things that go into your taxes. There's a whole sheet of stuff. And, there's, and some of these, I don't even, to be honest with you, Best Start for Kids, parks, countywide marine district, countywide conservation futures, all these things. Some of them are voted in by the county, some of them are voter approved, right? So, it all adds up. So, that's part of the problem is that little things adding up together create a big problem at the end. So if we're paying attention to the little things as they come along and saying, maybe, no, we don't need that. That's how we save money and work better for you. So we will, as a council, I promise you, make sure that your budget is very efficient and without cutting services, because there is a ways to go yet. So that's my 2 cents. Any next question? Hi, make sure you walk across the room.
Hi, Chris Vilsenor, Hazelwood. So hopefully, well, first thing I noticed on the presentation is our police and fire expenditures exceed our property tax revenue by a good deal. So if we're talking about little things, those are 2 big things that account for more than our revenue. Our total property tax revenue that the city brings in. So it's not, those don't seem like little things. The second thing is I'm trying to square is comments that Council Member Coleman and Council Member Sherlock made. Council Member Sherlock states that we're doing just the basic stuff, whereas Council Member Coleman, through his comment, would like you to believe that we have a summer house and a jet ski. Can you tell me what our summer house and jet ski are? I'd like to understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, my comment was simply about when your expenditures rise above your income level, then at some point you have to trim back a little bit. And I'm talking about trimming, we're not talking about cutting, but we have to start looking at this as business. And when you work for Wall Street, you're managing P&Ls, you're managing line items. And so we need to go in, we need to take a look at the expenditures by category, by department, and find out where we can trim so that we can make that lean as we're also looking for new revenue streams. Before we add a burden to the taxpayers. So our responsibility is to provide a safe, affordable community and to operate our government within our means, right? As a city council and as our finance director, our team, we need to take a close look at the environment while we're talking about raising taxes, because we work for the taxpayer. I'm going to give you a few numbers here that I pulled up. The value of your dollars was 21.8% less than it was 4 years ago. Waste management in Newcastle has gone up 24% since 2020. Gold Creek Utility District up 15.7% since 2020. Puget Sound electricity between 23 and 26 going up 26.5%. Natural gas, same period, 29.2%. Washington State is the third highest gas prices in the nation. Our food and beverage prices are up 22.4%. We're the sixth highest grocery prices in the nation. That's not to mention insurance rates. My point is that the taxpayers have a heavy burden. And before we start talking about maintaining services for the city, we also need to be cognizant of people that are struggling on fixed incomes and people who are struggling to buy groceries and put their kids in school and in college. So it's nice to maintain services, but we have to have a real conversation, and we have to look at both sides of the equation when we are looking at our P&L as a city, not just a revenue stream. And it's not hard for the effective. It's something that we have to talk about. And so rather than just adding a model which we have today that allows us to manipulate revenue streams, which are taxes, which are burdens on the taxpayer, the point is let's look at the other side too. Where can we trim? And we can always trim, we can always become more lean. And at some point, we may need to get to a point to where we have to cut something. But let's talk about trimming first, because we have a great community, we have a small community, we don't have a lot of opportunities for revenue, but we have people here in our community that are struggling, and we have to serve all the people in Newcastle. That was my point.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Yeah, I want to provide my own perspective as a council member and share data. I was raised by a systems engineer, so I'm also a fan of numbers. So I think, yeah, I push back strongly on the notion that we can treat our city government like a business. We are very limited in terms of revenues that we can pursue. We need to provide services that a business might not need to provide for people. Looking at our levy rates over the last 3 years, the levy rates have fluctuated. For your property tax, they are lower than they were 2 years ago. Looking at, folks are speaking to what our city manager and finance director have done, and I would agree. They've, implemented something called interfund service charges, which has allowed us to move $535,000 from other funds into our general fund. That's not it's great in the sense that we can move money around, but it's not necessarily generating new money. Looking at our city staff and services, and I think this is really critical. We have less city staff than a lot of cities that are half our size. We're about 14,000, approaching 15,000. I've seen several cities that are 7,000 or less that have less staff than we do. We had 28.6 full-time employees. Now we have currently 21.6 full-time employees. So we have actively been cut. I personally have the opinion that the reason we're having this conversation about revenue, the reason that you can go look at our last meeting, the reason that we put together a sustainability model for revenue is because we have hard decisions coming. We need to figure out how to have more revenue as a city because there are things that are out of our control. We've done a lot to cut, and this is a coaching phrase I use with the kids I coach, right? Is we don't worry about the things we can't control. You don't get mad about the call or updates. You try to focus on what's in front of you. And that's what I've tried to do, at least my ethos is both the council work. So what we're facing is that we've done a lot of cost saving measures. Like I mentioned, we've reduced even the equipment rental fund by $63,000, but there's things we can't control. We only have so much space in the city. Our development revenue, which is something that comes from developable land in the city, is down by $165,000 projection for next year. Our Parks Impact Fund, which is something that who's rolling around our parks in the city is down by a projected $75,000 next year. Our transportation, oh God, I know the acronym, but I forget. TIF, Transportation Impact Fund, we did not have a specific prediction, but that revenue is going to be down next year. More things we can't control. We are seeing a 4.9% increase in our fire and rescue services. That's an additional $144,000 a year. There's legally only one fire and rescue service we can use due to proximity to other things. It is Bellevue Fire. We see their firehouse right there. Their chief is a Newcastle resident. That's great. That's increasing by $144,000 a year. Our police cost is increasing by $262,500 per year. That's a 7% increase, and that's not including incoming body cams and cams in their cars that we're expecting as well. There's a 4% cost of living adjustment for all our city staff, mandated by law. And then additionally, in 2026, we're expecting to get the 12 officer we have budgeted for but not received yet. That would be an additional cost that we've received. So all those costs together is $677,000 a year that we can't control. I think long-term, right, we look at our development revenue, that's going to be a finite source. There's only so many developable pieces of land. I'm looking at more of those pieces next year after we're done with comp plan. We use short-term emergency pandemic emergency funds to sort of backfill some costs we have for police services for the next couple of years, but there's not a great, I personally believe there's not a great plan after that. So we are running out of runway with a lot of things. I understand, I push back on the idea of using phrases like that we're raiding your pocketbooks or that we're putting, you know, simply because 80 for the average homeowner that lives in Newcastle, 88 to 89% of the taxes you pay are not coming from the city of Newcastle, they're coming from other sources, right? King County does implement a lot of different taxes, they all go to the ballot, whether you vote for them or against them, you're paying those as well as the different school district levies. So that's on average. And we are tied with Sammamish for last in the county in the amount of taxes we implement on our citizens. So when I sit here as a council member and I try to control the controllables and look at these different revenue sources we have and make these different decisions, I try to factor in all these different contexts. When I look at around the county and I go to these regional meetings and I see that like 70% or more of these different cities are implementing levies because they have to, because they're facing similar budget challenges, whether they're big or small, whether they're Bellevue or Tukwila. That's why these conversations are happening. And I don't blame folks for not knowing that because local government's boring. I'm weird and I like it, but that's why we invite you to talk about this budget. That's why we invite you to give us feedback on this budget. And I think it's really critical to look at the whole picture there as we have this discussion. So sorry.
All right, go ahead. I personally think that being second to last is not good. We should be last and rating your pocketbook. So,
I feel last.
You know, as I have always told my kids, being frugal does not mean that we have to compromise. And I think I have wrote emails to you folks to express, you know, my philosophy. And I would like to compliment all of you. Thank you for having the town hall here instead of at the golf course. I mean, that is a very good example that we are not compromising anything, we're not giving up anything, but we are using our money wisely. I think that is a very, very good example. Look at what we have this year. We have our second town hall versus in the past, we only have one town hall. And we never had such an interactive town hall of the years that I have spent. I'm not criticizing of what we have done before, but I want to compliment the steps that we are moving forward to. I think we are in the right directions. So I wanted to, you know, I really think that you folks are doing a great job, you know, going into the direction of, I think sometimes it's a matter of perspective. Okay, instead of saying cut or trim, we're looking at efficiency. You know, we're doing the budget like we do at our house and doing, you know, I worked at the bank for more than 30 years, and that's what we have to think about it every day for our stockholders, for our customers, and you folks are doing the same thing for us. And I wanted to thank you.
What I've noticed is on the revenue numbers, there are two things that, I've noticed recently is that there's a lot more houses being built, which to me equals more property tax and more revenue to the city. The other thing I also recently noticed is some of the businesses are charging a local tax fee. I just wanted to see if that is included in your revenue numbers on the PowerPoint that you did there.
I'm sorry, we all heard that exact comment, sorry, the comment, was it, Jane, was that a question? I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't.
I was just wondering, in your PowerPoint for the revenue total, if you're accounting for the new homes that are being built, I think there's over 40 plus being built. And then also there's a local tax that some of the businesses are charging, if that is also going to the city.
So you're asking if we're accounting for the new homes being built? Yes, that's development revenue, yes, and for the business local tax on businesses. We do get sales tax from the local community, so a portion of sales tax that people pay at businesses comes to the city of Newcastle. So if you buy something online, you buy something at our brick and mortar store, we get a percentage of that. The number escapes me right off the top of my head, but we do get a percentage of that sales tax. So yes, we do. And so the key for home deliveries is it's delivered to a Newcastle address, it becomes a Newcastle revenue source. That's what it says. So if you bought something in Newcastle that had it delivered to Issaquah, then you wouldn't get that. Okay. Go ahead.
So the city, the property, or sorry, sales tax that you pay, I think it's 10.3 now, 10.2. We get 0.08.
This was separate from the receipt. It was not included in the sales tax figure. It was called a local tax. It was new and then in. So I think I had to go $60 at the pizza shop, and we were not paying $1 local tax, $5.
I don't know if that's a King County tax. We don't have anything like that.
I'd like to first thank, Councilmember Sherlock for being the person on stage who had the bravery to answer either of the questions that have been asked tonight. She was brave and actually talked about the budget and where she'd like to go ahead and have conversations about making adjustments with the council. I'd like to thank Councilmember Charbonneau for his education on how taxes work, because while I've been paying attention for a long time, I know there's a lot of people and we don't know all of those things all the time. So thank you, Councilmember Charbonneau, for your education. The comments I've heard on the stage tonight talk about one-time offerings. Reducing an expenditure line so that it doesn't have to have a 25% cushion, that helps you 1 year. ARPA funds run out next year. I think the questions that have been asked tonight are, how do you plan longevity and sustainability for our city? How do we afford fire and police for our city going forward? There's a finance committee sitting on that stage right now. And while we can attend finance committee meetings, there is no public comment. The meetings are not recorded and they are not offered on YouTube. This is our chance to ask our finance committee what their plan is. And I'm extremely disappointed that we have not heard anything of substance from any one of them.
Thank you, Allison. So yes, we do have a finance committee that meets once a month, and there is public comment allowed at the finance committee. You can submit the public comment ahead of time, and it makes the meetings more efficient and it prevents distractions, but you are free to submit comments to the finance committee or contact any of us at any time via email or stop us on the street or whatever you want to do. We have told you we're in the budget season. We are looking at the budget right now, right? We're looking at all the sources of revenue and expenditures. And so when the final budget is done, we'll determine whether that fiscal sustainability model needs to be activated or we need to do something with it or not. Councilmember Sherlock did speak to that. And that is a work in progress right now. So we do not have a concrete answer for you tonight. That's why we're taking your suggestions and hearing your input. And when the budget is done, you'll know what we've decided, whether we need to tap a new revenue source, whether we need to reduce some expenditure or what. That's the purpose of tonight's meeting. Gather input. We're in the middle of the budget season, and that we will have a budget by the end of November.
So as we are looking at the budget season, if you want to know about 2024, we will come at a slight surplus in 2024. If you want to know about 2023, we came in as surplus in 2023. When I heard in 2022, I think when we were in 2022 working on 23 budget, it was like Rome is burning, Rome is burning. But what happens? We come to 24, we see a surplus. 24, when in 23, we were looking at like 25, looks good. 22 also, I think we were okay. I think we were balanced, right? Because I think in 21, again, they were saying Rome was burning, but then we were fine. So what I have seen last 2-3 years, the budget has balanced and we have ended up with a surplus. We might say that, oh man, fiscal sustainability, what will happen? You know, Rome will burn again in 27, 28, 29, who knows? So far, 26 looks good, 25 looks great. And the ideas that we are going to implement, we have a few ideas we're going to do. As we said, we are still in the budget season. We will keep updating that model. It's just a model. And based on that model, we haven't seen Rome did not burn based on this model in the last few years. So the model is not the holy grail. Yeah, it's not everything, it's just a model, it's an assumption. I have done this for the last 20 years, budgeting, finance, business analytics, pricing strategy. And I have seen it all. There's always room, you know, when we make budgets. The past finance director did a lot of sandbagging in the budget. And that's why we always ended up with a surplus. So I feel that there are still a lot of efficiencies, a lot of things, a lot of creative things that can be done in the budget. And I don't see any problem to fiscal sustainability, at least for the next 2 to 3 years. And then we can look at taxes later. But let's not jump on it. You know, let's try everything. Let's be mindful of people based on fixed incomes. You know, when I joined this council, I come from a finance background, and that's what I wanted to bring to the table. There's a reason I managed my finances that I was able to retire at 26. And I'm sure we can do it, you know, I know we don't treat government as a business, but I wish we did. Because, you know, those corporations and those businesses, they bring efficiency. They don't cut services. They'll give you full services, but at the same time, they will bring efficiency. And there's always room for things. And let's take it as a challenge. I'm taking it as a challenge. Lindsay is taking it as a challenge. She's very efficient. And together as a team, we have some very experienced members in the finance committee. We have a CPA of 50 years of experience. You know, Steve is he has a business background. So we have experienced people. We are just trying to brainstorm and put things together. So you will see a lot of things. 25 looks great so far. So I think that should answer the question.
Thank you for the question. I think when I started speaking earlier, I said the good news is we're starting to get on the same foundational agreement on where we're at. And what I didn't say out loud is in the past, which has been referred to by others up here, that we weren't at that level because there wasn't trust in the staff from everybody on the council. And that was a huge reason why we hadn't come to an agreement or yet got a plan in place. Now, everyone is talking how much we love our finance director and our city manager, and we all do. And that's what I mean by we're starting to get on the same page. And so if we're saying that they're doing the job well, and they're giving us numbers that we trust, what I'm saying is we then we should have real conversations about the future because now we trust the information that we have. And in the past, yes, it didn't come out to what we were told was gonna happen. And so, but we're in a different time now. And moving forward, if we're going to continually expect the staff that we all agree are great to keep making cuts and reducing expenditures, I don't think that's fair to them. That's putting them in a situation that's not attainable. And I'm going to really push back on that. But I do want to reiterate that we are having good conversations. And I'm very hopeful that we can come to an agreement. Right now, everything does look okay in the next couple of years. What I would like to do is have a conversation because I think it's expected from you all. What is maybe we don't enact any taxes right now, but what is the tipping point that is going to set off that plan to do that in the future that we can all agree on? That's what I'm trying to get to. And I do think that is possible if everyone is willing to come to the table and be brave enough to put a plan in place, which is really what our job is. Government, people are talking about run government as a business, run government as a household. If that's not reality, government is weird. It's very weird. Most people don't understand how it works. What the staff was trying to do tonight was really put a bug in your ear in how it does work. Fund budgeting is just different. If you've been on a volunteer board, especially like a PTA or something like that, you understand fund budgeting because there's restrictions to different buckets of the money. And once things come in with those restrictions, it's illegal to spend that money any other way. And so it's just this other piece on top of some whipped cream on top of the pie that you have to pay attention to so you don't get in trouble. And it makes it difficult. And that's why it takes a little bit longer. But we can do it. We're all smart people up here, and you all are smart people out there. So I'm hopeful. I want to continue the conversation. I do think it's a real issue that we need to address. And I am ready to do the hard work and address that problem that we see in the future.
Okay. Who's next?
Claudia Hershey, Newport Woods. I'm concerned about the ad hoc safety committee and the lack of transparency on this committee. There are no meeting announcements for the committee. There are no agendas. There are no meeting notes that can be read from any of the meetings. There were no application process or vetting of members of this committee. In fact, one member already had to be dismissed. As an ad hoc committee, there should be some defined outcome, maybe some recommendations, and it should sunset. And I don't know what that date is. The whole thing is a mystery that is not very understandable.
I appreciate your comments on that. So we meet once a month. And after every meeting, we take meticulous notes and then we give updates during our city council meetings. And if you have more questions, please either write to me by email or attend the meetings and ask questions. In the initial process, we very heavily advertised the public safety meeting that we had the first week in March. And then we gave people an opportunity to apply and interview for the process. And I went over this a couple of meetings ago, but we ended up getting 8 people that were interested in participating. And we ended up assigning 6 people roles, and we assigned those roles based on the commitment to public safety, commitment to the community, passion for serving the entire community, propensity for teamwork, and every selected member agreed that no crime is acceptable. And these are all citizens, it's a citizen-based committee. And we operate very similar to a block watch, for example. Except our whole plan is community engagement. So recently, again, we have notes, I'd be happy to share them with you if you want to email them, but I will give updates at every single meeting. After every single meeting at the city council meetings. And so recently there's 6 of us, and we broke up into teams. And here's how we're going to work the community. We've got 2 people that are going to focus on apartments and multi-family complexes, because there's a lot of crime there. And so the idea is to go out and meet with them, talk to them about safety issues, and just engage and get their ideas, get their concerns, bring it back to the community, to the city council, bring it back to the chief of police, and see if we can collaborate for solutions. Another team is working on block watch, business crime watch, HOAs, and neighborhoods. And we've done a lot of research back there, and we spent a lot of time even talking with Flock, who has delivered some cameras for us in the city. They have different types of cameras for the neighborhoods and HOAs if they're interested. And then the third group focuses on social media. There's a lot of posts on social media, a lot of people talking about crime, so we follow up with people who are making comments. Resident follow-up, if anyone has any emails or questions, I'm happy to follow up with them. And then the homeless public camping concerns, that's a rising concern. We have some new policies or some latitude given to us by the Supreme Court. So that's something that we as a city council need to address. But you're right. At some point, we need to deliver to the community through the city council and in collaboration with you and your suggestions and recommendations. But we need you to be part of the solution. I don't know how much more we can communicate because we give the monthly updates, but I'd be happy to take your emails at any time. In fact, back there on the table, there's a sign-up sheet, and you can put your name down, put your contact information down. I'd be glad to talk to you and anybody in here about what we're doing and how we're doing it. But all we're doing basically is gathering information and interacting with the community and sharing ideas and trying to create solutions. Yeah. Does that help? Please.
It actually does not help. It concerns me a great deal. Number one, I made an official public records request for all records. I listed them all out associated with the ad hoc public safety committee, and there was nothing there. There were not notes. There were not any application process. You're just telling me what you did verbally from your committee, but there is nothing on record. And that is a true fact. Second of all, you made me extremely concerned. I'm practically shaking thinking about this. You are sending ad hoc committee members out to communities, to the apartment buildings that are somehow representing the city of Newcastle in conversations. I think that's a job for the police officers, or to be formally structured by the city council. We can have safety committee members representing the city. I'm totally in state of shock.
We're citizens communicating with citizens. We're just talking, we have crime, and we're just talking about crime. And we're just trying to find solutions. That's all we're doing. We're not acting as police. And we're very sensitive to that. We've had lots of discussions with the chief, with the city manager, and some with the city council. But we are just talking with neighbors, just like you would in a block watch. So there's no danger, no risk to what we're doing. What we're doing is we're your advocate. If you have a question or concern, let's all talk about it together and bring it back to the city council, bring it back to the chief, and create solutions. So I fail to see any concerns about neighbors talking to neighbors, and that's all we are as neighbors and businesses, talking about crime and public safety. To answer your question about your Open Public Meetings Act, we're not subject to those rules and laws because we don't act on behalf of the governing body. We don't conduct hearings. and we don't take testimonies or public comments. So we're just a committee, an ad hoc committee, which is a part-time committee or a temporary committee. And we're just speaking with the community. So this is all about community engagement. And I have lived here for 28 years and nobody talks about crime. And I think it's time that we all talk about it so we can be vigilant and share our ideas and best practices with our other neighbors. That's all we're doing.
So let me add to that. So the pushback I'm hearing is that there's been no transparency, but there was a letter that went in the mail. Everybody in Newcastle back in March, every single person. Now, maybe you didn't open the letter, but it fully described the ad hoc public safety committee and what we were trying to do with public safety, being the #1 concern of our residents. I get it that some people, maybe you feel safe and you think this is a waste of time and you're frustrated or whatever the case may be, but the majority of your fellow residents are concerned about crime and we're going to address it. So as a mayor, I had the ability to create an ad hoc or temporary committee. So I did that. And we took applications, right? That was all advertised. Maybe you didn't see that either. And we interviewed people. And then we picked 6 outstanding citizens who are concerned just like we are about crime. If you've never been a victim, congratulations, good for you. And most people, maybe they haven't, but people are concerned about crime. It is our job to take care of those concerns. Now, like Steve said, you know, I know in your case, Claudia, you submitted a request and we answered everything Steve just said was answered in your email to you in public record request. And like Steve said, he even sent his email to you and said, hey, contact me if you want. So I don't know if you've done that, but you can contact me, contact any of us up here. Now, public safety is the #1 concern of our citizens. So, you know, that's what this majority is going to take care of and look at. So when you get a new mayor someday, right, maybe he'll disband the committee or she or you, whoever it is. But when I'm the mayor, I know this is the #1 concern of the committee for the community. So that's why we have the ad hoc safety committee. They are going out as private citizens, talking to private citizens, just like you would talk to your neighbor or you would talk to people down the street. You get to know them. What are their concerns? What's going on? There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, isn't that what we want? Our community to communicate with each other and talk, discuss issues. That's why we're here tonight. So we want people engaging with people, and these people are dedicated to finding out what are the root causes of crime. Come back, we talk to the police, maybe there's a solution. We don't have enough police to go and talk to community neighbors and things like that. And we beg King County for more officers, but they don't have any for us. Right, so we don't have the police to be able to do that. So we need additional resources, and that's these dedicated people want to go out in the community and talk to their neighbors and their fellow community. So I think that they're doing a great job, and I congratulate them.
Yes, Claudia, thank you for thank you for sharing. Actually, I share your concern as well. I think the views stated are not universal. I did not personally vote to have a public safety committee, but you know, I was trying to look at it with eyes and say, okay, well, what could this work to? So I've ran an ad hoc committee for the council myself, and every single one of those ad hoc committee meetings, we had a city staff member present. I know for the fact that the last 2 ad hoc committee meetings have not had a staff member present, and that concerns me. I think the idea too that, you know, it is of my personal opinion that if you go and you posit that you want to, with these very strong, I believe, opinions about, you know, no crime is acceptable, public safety, and you go and you posit that very, you know, not necessarily disagreeing with that, but posit that this is the sort of issue you want to talk about. I suspect that you get people that are sympathetic to that. And then when you go and send those people out into the community, I'm not comfortable with them representing the city or saying they're representing the city. You're not going to there's going to be response bias there. There's going to be non-response bias as well. I know myself, my age, and a lot of people bigger than my age would not feel comfortable talking to these folks. And when you know, he represents, like, we're talking about representing as like, oh, like we communicate well with the chief. The chief openly said at our last meeting, he was worried about not getting information about this community as well. And when that was mentioned, the response from Councilmember Tomlin was restricting information gathering. And now I hear you talking about information gathering, we're also offering solutions. And we're positing solutions to people, and that's concerning to me. And to me, the lack of, like, we can talk about transparency and we can talk about wanting to be transparent, but we don't, to me, what we do as a local government is not put all the burden on the people out there to reach out to us. We put burden on ourselves to try to serve those people. And we don't get defensive when people bring up something. There are plenty of ideas I've had that have not been good for them. And I respect those views and I listen to those views. And I would challenge the people of the ad hoc committee, don't just talk, don't be defensive when people are asking you about being transparent. Ask, how can I, thank you for that feedback, how can I be more transparent? Don't say just come listen to a meeting, ask how can I reach out? Is this concerning to me? I'm not comfortable with these people representing the city, going out into those places, sharing views yourself, like right away you're saying apartments involving things like housing has more crime. What's the base for that? Show me the statistics. If you're going out into those communities with a predetermined sort of view and solution, what do you think is the feedback you're going to get from that? So really, I want to ask the people back there, and I want to ask the people up here to push ourselves. It's not going to be what they're doing.
So, saying that we should bury our heads in the sand because we don't want to deal with it is not a reason. So, right, so there's a fundamental, obviously, you probably have picked up on this fundamental disagreement on the role of government up here between our members, although we do, for the most part, work well together. It's kind of discouraging to hear that unless a city staff or government person goes with somebody, that they're not viable or valid, right? Isn't it the idea to get government out of our lives and let people solve issues themselves and talk to each other? That's my point of view. So this committee is going out to the community and asking their fellow citizens, what's going on, right? What are your concerns? They're not saying, hey, you know, you should do X, Y, or Z. We're saying, what are your concerns? And we're bringing that back to the police or to the council. So that's the fundamental role of government, is to help people with solutions. So that's what this committee is doing. Right? So that's my choice as the mayor to make this committee. Right? I clearly, some people don't like it for whatever reason. I can't even fathom, right? I know you said it, but it doesn't make sense to me. Because we want community engagement and we want people talking about issues to solve problems. That's it.
Yeah, just for a quick follow-up on that, 100% of every individual and business we've talked to has been a positive experience for us and for them. So people are raising concerns, but they're not getting any substance behind their concerns. We're here just to talk with our community and find solutions. We're not giving solutions, we're trying to find solutions. That's a point of communication. That's the point of collaboration. That's the point in us reaching out and interacting with the community. When we started this year, one of our primary goals was to increase our community engagement. And this is what we're doing. We're engaging the community, and there's not one of you that can tell us what's wrong with that. And so we're not trying to police. And I think that's where most of you are coming from, is you feel like we're out there policing, and we're not. You go meet the people back there, talk to them, and you haven't. I haven't seen anyone talking with our community back there. Call me, talk to me, and you will have a good experience, I guarantee it. And if you have concerns, let's address them.
Yeah, the question behind it.
Just want to say real quick, I don't think it's fair, respectfully, to put words in other people's mouths that they didn't say. No one said bury your head. That's not fair. We can disagree on things, but don't be speaking for other people. And also, Steve, you just said 100% of our interactions have been good for us and them. That's also not fair. You can't speak for someone else. You can speak for yourself, that's fine. But don't speak for other people without them here.
That's just a matter of fact. Okay.
Well, I'd like to say, the number one concern you said in Newcastle is public safety and the rising crime. So in what kind of data? How many people responded in the survey? We have such a diverse community in our city. How many people voice their concern? They feel like Newcastle is not safe. They feel like public safety is their number one concern.
we need to know the real data and the statistic. So, and how old, when was the survey? And oftentimes, I heard people come to Newcastle and our own citizens, they feel safe, and we have such responsible and caring police. They have been reaching out to the community. We all agree, community engagement matters so much. There are so many different ways, more effective ways to reach out. We have Newcastle Arts Councils, we have Newcastle Parks, we have Friends of Newcastle Libraries. They have been working tirelessly, providing such meaningful and engaging interactive community engagement activities throughout the years. So I'd like to see more council members be there in the community, meeting more people. And then there really, it's such a different kind. We have a lot of space, a lot of activity, but we don't see a lot of people there. Sometimes we go, oh, senior here, right? We have a lot of people there. But I would like to see another level of community engagement through personal connection, face-to-face communication. And other than, because we do have outstanding police and firefighters in our city, and they work for us. We also requested to get more policemen, but as you know, our mayor said, it's not available to add one more police. But when we really provide more interactive community engagement activities, people feel like they are in it, a true sense of belonging, and you feel like we are connected at a personal level, not just you just talk on behalf of us. First of all, we didn't vote for this ad hoc committee, and you said it's a temporary. What does temporary mean? How long is this committee going to be there? You see the outstanding Newcastle citizens. So their information should be available online, and also public record requests. And I'm really shocked to hear, you know, there's nothing. Thank you, Claudia, for sharing your concern and let us know about this. Thank you.
Okay, one last word. I'm not going to ask the Friends of the Library and the Arts Council to go tackle crime. So this committee, we talked about this in the council. We talked about it in a public meeting, open public meeting in March, and everything that we're discussing here tonight was discussed. That there's been a number of community surveys. There's a biannual survey that goes out to the public. There was a survey, impromptu survey while the planning commission was taking input, and every survey that comes back, public safety is number one. That's data driven. Right, that's not just a guess on one place. So I saw, saw a hand behind. Very good.
Hi, good evening. My name is Carol Simpson. I've lived in Newcastle for 25 years. If that means anything, everybody always has to say how long they live here, like that's a big deal. Councilmember Tall, talking about crime all the time. But in your statement just recently, you said nobody talks about crime. You looked at us like you don't talk about it. We don't sit here and be insulted by you saying what we don't talk about crime. Please. Several council members have said we are an open, transparent council. Great. You work for us. We want you to be open and transparent. So if you form a committee, be open and transparent. Don't hide behind the law that says, well, we don't have to have open meetings. We don't have to announce them. We don't have to take public comment. We don't have to keep meeting minutes. You work for us. Claudia said, we want a more open and transparent council. I do. I want to know what you're doing. I want to know about measurable results. I've asked for measurable results for years. How do you measure success? When do you know when you're done? When do you know when you're doing it right? We will never get to zero. I learned the hard part when I was a council member. We will never get to zero crime. That's right. We will never get to zero. So how much do we want to spend for a certain level of crime in our community? And our chief of police presents quarterly results every 3 months to you and to the community, so we know what crime is in Newcastle. It's not too bad. It is bad for the people it happens to. Now, I may be more vulnerable now because I live in an apartment and I also own a home. But when you're in your apartment, you are more vulnerable. Your car is sitting outside. You have no choice. There's no garage to put it in to protect it. There's more cars there for people to prowl. It's easier. We're a bigger target. So we are more vulnerable. Don't blame apartments for crime. Protect us. Now, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment for people who are concerned about their property taxes. For this year, 2024, last year, the city council voted to increase the revenue by 1%. Did your property taxes go up this year? No, they did not. They went down. Why? It's our crazy whack-a-mole King County assessor and our property values. Last year, our single-family home values went down greatly. That reduced our property tax burden. But condos went up. Their taxes increased. If you talk to people who live in condos in Newcastle, their property taxes went up. This month, the property valuation notices just came out in the mail. They're all listed on the King County assessors, parcel viewers. I've already looked at all the council members, my own, several of my neighbors, anybody who's complaining back in time when I was a city council member, anybody who complained to me about their property taxes, I look them up and I track them. Our single family home values went up about 18% for the next year for 2025 taxes. Our property taxes will go up. Doesn't matter what they do, it's going to go up. Condos went down. They're going to go down. But that's only fair because they went up last year. Whose aren't going up? Safeway. Their property value has been the same for the last 5 years. The county assessor haven't changed their property value at all. What's happening with commercial? It's sucking air. Office buildings going down, commercial going down. Now, we rode a roller coaster going up when the Commons was built. We got $90 million building sitting over there, generating brand new, great property taxes for us. That was great for balancing budget. And then ARPA funds came along, helped you guys immensely. We could balance the budget in 2024 and 25. Gee, there's nothing bad coming down the pipe. We'll even lower the amount of money we have to keep in the ending fund balance. That'll help us balance the budget for the next couple of years because going into the next year, we won't have to have as much money in the bank, only 17%. But I've heard from former finance directors that hard to pay the bills when they come due, when we don't have enough money in the bank. So people have asked about the 6-year plan, but you're not answering the question. Because I did hear the finance committee say they are considering all the taxes. Utility taxes are coming. Taxes on your autos are coming. And it's not fair. Some people have paid big taxes buying their homes when they have to pay for a new street. And their lots cost $900,000 before the house was even built. So when you say some of the newcomers aren't paying their fair share, they are paying more than their fair share. And they should be exempted from that tax. I don't know if I'm here to talk about providing a donut hole to exempt those people from that tax. Anyway, I could talk there. So this put me to sleep. I really wanted to see the future. I really wanted to see numbers and charts of where we're going. And we didn't hear it. This isn't the kind of budget meeting that former council member Bill Slavin would have liked right at budget time. I'm sorry.
I would like to close if I can. First of all, thank you for answering Councilmember Charbonneau's question about crime in apartments. You and Claudia, your points are well taken. I'm very proud of our team and their dedication to our community and their dedication to public safety. We have nothing to hide. We are only doing good things for this community. We'll continue to do good things for this community. We will give you more information. We'll give you our notes from the meeting. We take meticulous notes from our meetings. And we're making progress. And as we continue to engage the community and we come up with ideas, we'll share them with the council. We'll share them with the chief. We'll share them with the city manager. And you can have any information you want. Write to me, I'll give you what you want anytime. We don't have to do an open public request. Boy, Steve, just let me know. Let's communicate. We'll work with that. We'll work it out. But your point is well taken and it's fair. So thank you.
Okay, we're getting close to the end, folks. Who else was having questions? Any other questions? All right, see your hand up.
I'll say one on the budget. And that is, when it comes to the administrative fees for the golf course. Okay, the golf course, we know we get a lot of sales tax in the golf course already. The golf course is the gem of our city, basically. People know of us because of the golf course. And they also pay us a lot of swim fees. Okay, so they are paying us already. And what my question is when you look, I heard the comments on the video from the last council meeting, and the question was, why, since we've looked at 2% admin fee before, why are we now going to 5%? And the question is, are we working with those guys? Are we collaborating with that particular business, which is so important to us? In terms of establishing what that looks like and what the impact is. And also, there are other things that could maybe be distributed like B&O tax or whatever that could be impacting all of the businesses instead of just one. So that's my question.
I'm sorry, Kim, was that a question or a comment?
Question on, are you collaborating with them? Why doing the 5%?
Thank you. So are we collaborating with them? Yes, city manager Bingle has met with them at least once. I know there's at least one more, if not more, in the books. They had stated in the past meeting that they felt like it was sudden, but I mean, it's been an ongoing discussion for a while, and we did reach out to them as soon as we thought it might be some level of action. I can't speak for other folks, I'll speak for myself. I think looking at 5%, doing a 5% admissions tax we anticipate around 200,000 per year in revenue. We don't know what the exact number would be. The golf course mentioned they felt singled out, and I think that's an unfortunate byproduct, honestly, of admissions tax is one of the few sources of revenue we can look at. And that would apply to things that people need to pay an admissions fee for. And so in other cities, it would apply to a lot more different entities. But for our city, it would apply to two. That would be the YMCA and the golf course. And then the YMCA, we had a discussion as a council that because it was a nonprofit organization, we didn't want to pursue that with them. And for me, so 200,000 a year relative to the other costs we're facing is not a lot in terms of revenue for us. When we look at the golf course, frankly, I think their demand is the most inelastic of any business in the city. And look, if we want to look at something like a B&O tax, I think that harms businesses overall much more than it would potentially this specific tax to the golf course. I talked to employees at the golf course. They talked about the amount of corporate events they do. They talked about the amount of other things, like Costco, Amazon having their big employee retreats there. I think they're still going to pay this 5%, quite frankly. And when we look at our very limited amount of revenue sources, such as that, relative to the other ones that are more direct, paid from the citizens, that's why I personally favor it. And that's why I would push for 5% personally, because it's not as much as I think it is, in my opinion, as well as I think it doesn't. They have very inelastic demand. A lot of folks that are going golfing, I think, will continue to go golfing, even if the price is slightly increased. And I think it doesn't hit folks. So, I'm first able to speak to it.
That's a great question. I thank you for asking that. I plan on meeting with them soon. I don't have a date yet, but we're in contact via email. I think it's definitely worth our time to talk to them because the 5% numbers are, we don't know if they're right or not. And so, my hope is we can have more of a dialogue. It sounds like they're very willing to have that dialogue. So I'm really hoping we can get a dialogue. And if we can get an idea of a better, like real accurate idea of what the numbers would be, I'm absolutely, interested in lowering down to 2% if that is gonna get us what we're looking for, if that makes sense. No guarantees on anything, right? I haven't talked with them yet, but I do think it's worth the time to have the discussion, and that's all I can do.
Right, okay, if I can, I'd like to close it out with a comment and question here. I get together with my buddies and we talk about the Seahawks. We argue about how the Seahawks win more games, and that's what this reminds me of. We all want the city to be great. We just have different ideas for how we're gonna do it, right? Somebody wanted the city to be great. Tony Ventrella, raise your hand, you know who Tony Ventrella is, raise your hand, come on, everybody knows him, right? He's down in Puyallup struggling, you guys, right? He was just in the hospital in Tacoma. He's down in Puyallup fighting for his life. All right, just to put this in perspective, everybody here wants the Seahawks to win games. Everybody here wants the city to be great. And I want to close by asking, where's Amy George? We are doing some things right. So Newcastle Days was great, thanks to you. I don't know what's coming up next. Can you just tell me what's coming up next, please?
So just for the record, this is probably not the forum to tell you how much Patriots fan. But they lost. Yeah, we're okay. So upcoming in a couple weeks, we have our fall recycling collection event that is being held on Saturday, September 28th, 9 to 3 at Hazelwood Elementary School. It is a grant-funded program to help you recycle all those hard to recycle items. We have a flyer here summarizing all the recyclables that they'll accept. We also have the information on our website and all across our social media as well. Coming up very soon in October, we are bringing back Pumpkins in the Park, and then here there's a little special twist. We have 30 row pumpkins being hidden across the parks in our community. And then looking a little bit further ahead, we'll be bringing back our Lights of Newcastle contest in December, and then we are already getting together to plan our Lunar New Year event in either late January or early February. And so that's what we have on tap for you all.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's past 9, and so we're gonna wrap this up tonight. And thank you for all who stuck around to the end. You're already so old. We appreciate it very much, and we appreciate the questions. Right? I know we have a lot of different questions, different points of view in the room, but you can trust that your council is communicating and working together. We might have different ideas about stuff, but I've been on the council a couple of years now, and we talk, right? We talk about things, we discuss things. We just have different views. That's what makes it great, right? That's why we're, making our city work best, because we all have different views that we're bringing to the table. So you can contact us at any time. You can email us all as a group. You can email us individually. You can contact city staff. It's all on the website. Don't hesitate to do that. Reach out to us. Reach out to your commission members. So they're doing a great job, like I mentioned at the beginning, the volunteers. They do a great job. Thanks to all of the commission members, whatever commission they're group they're on. So last thing I'll say is I'm going to make a plug for tomorrow is is POWMIA Day, and we're all here because of the sacrifices of a lot of people who came before us. There's thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people who never came home, don't know where they are, so their sacrifices makes things like this possible. So please remember that a little bit tomorrow, and thank you for all for coming tonight. Stop by these groups around the perimeter and say hi. Thank you.